The Philadelphia Eagles have not been one of the best teams in the league for quite some time. The last time the Eagles won the Super Bowl was in 2017, and it was a well-deserved one. Since then, the Eagles have been an average team. They did make the playoffs in 2018, 19, and 21, but got eliminated each time. The Eagles seem to be stuck in a spot where they can't figure out what they need to be the same team from 2017. They had two very helpful quarterbacks like Carson Wentz and Nick Foles. Both men have left, and now the Eagles have Jalen Hurts. Hurts may seem like a good quarterback in some ways, but if you take a deeper look at his game, you can see he does have some pretty big flaws. A lot of fans were also criticizing the Eagles' defense last season. So how exactly can the Eagles become a Super Bowl caliber team again? Well, let's not waste any time, and let's get straight into it. Now, the best place we can start is taking a look at the good side of the Eagles. One part of their team we can all agree is very successful would be their offensive line. Every guy on that offensive line is at least an above average player, and they just seem unstoppable. The Eagles also have one of the best tackle duos in the league with Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson. Speaking of Mailata, he had a huge improvement in the 2021 season as he went from an okay starter to a top 3 player in his position. If we take a look at PFF, 3 of the 5 guys in the offensive line have a PFF grade of 80 and above. The only 2 who don't are Landon Dickerson and Isaac Seumalo, and it's not like those 2 are bad players in any way. Landon Dickerson is just under a PFF grade of 70, and Isaac Seumalo's grade is in the low 70s. While the offensive line is very strong, their defense spoke otherwise last season. They still have one of the better cornerbacks in the league by the name of Darius Slay. He had a 74.4 QB rating allowed in coverage and made it to the Pro Bowl. He joined the Eagles in 2020 after previously playing for the Detroit Lions. The only problem last season was that Slay didn't have other guys to work with. They weren't very helpful, which explains why their opponents averaged around 22 points a game. And if we take a deeper look at the Eagles' defense last season, we can tell people thought it was a big problem. Last season, quarterbacks completed 3 of 4 passes against the Eagles. Think about that for a second. Doing something like that in football is not an easy task. When the Eagles played the Chargers in November of last season, although the Eagles kept it a close game, Justin Herbert was a machine as he went 32 for 38 from the field when it comes to passing. That's incredible to say the least. The Eagles' defense was definitely a problem, but now Slay has more help. The Eagles have James Bradberry, who's capable of contesting and stopping any receiver. His hustle and strength makes him look just like Darius Slay. Although Bradberry is good, his PFF grade is lower than Avonte Maddox. He was tied 10th with receptions allowed in 2021 and tied 12th for solo tackles. The Eagles also have some other defenders who really aren't that bad, such as TJ Edwards and Hassan Reddick. Now, can we say the defense is a problem for the Eagles? Last season is a yes, but as of right now, we're not sure and have to find out. If the defense continues to allow touchdowns and not be a helpful part of the team, then Philly should keep their eyes on that part of the team until it is no longer a problem. Now let's take a look at the Eagles offensively, starting off with their quarterback, Jalen Hurts. Now, if you take a look at some stats, Hurts seems really good. Hurts had a touchdown to interception ratio of 16-9 last season and threw for over 3,000 yards, which is not bad at all. PFF also gave him a grade of 77.1, which is in the A status. If that's the case, then why is it that ESPN put Jalen Hurts in the Tier D, prove it or lose it, potentially last year starting? Well, if we take a closer look at Hurts' game, we'll see the problem. First off, last season, according to NBC Sports, Hurts had a big problem with reading the field. If we go back to December 26, 2021, the Eagles played the New York Giants and blew them out 34-10. But in the first half, the Eagles only scored 3 points off of a field goal. This was because, for one, Hurts seemed injured when he played and also wasn't moving as quick as he normally should on a rush attempt. But back to NBC Sports' point about not reading the field, in the first half of that Giants game, Dallas Goedert was wide open for the touchdown. I mean, look at this. Nobody is on this man. But instead, the pass went to Quez Watkins, and he was highly contested, which didn't allow the Eagles to pick up many yards. Now, do I think the Eagles should let go of Jalen Hurts? No, I wouldn't say so. And here's why. He's only 24 years old, meaning that the man still hasn't fully obtained his prime level. He is going into his third year in the NFL, and for Jalen, now is the time to really show Philadelphia what he is all about. One of the problems for the Eagles is getting that QB. Hurts could be the guy, and the fact that he isn't an average quarterback who's in his veteran years is huge for them. And it's not like Hurts doesn't have a lot of help. With possibly the best offensive line in football, they can protect the man at all costs, meaning he has a better chance at completing passes. Now, I think that's enough talk about Jalen Hurts. Let's take a look at the Eagles' running game. As of right now, their running back was supposed to be Miles Sanders, but he is currently out with leg tightness and soreness. And according to sources, his injury is getting worse, which is a huge problem. But while we're talking about Sanders, let's take a look at some of his stats. Miles Sanders had a PFF grade of 71.6 in 2021, as he had 137 carries and 754 rushing yards. He was ranked 18th in running backs rankings by PFF. Just like with Hurts, Sanders seems like a very young man who has time for improvement, and PFF even said in their ranking he has time to improve. Now, while Sanders is out, their second guy they can go to is Kenneth Gainwell, another running back who's a solid player and is very young. He will be going into his sophomore year, and he didn't play all that bad in year one. Even though it was just one game he started in, he still ran for 291 yards with 5 touchdowns. The Eagles' running game isn't much of a problem. It's just the fact that Philly needs to wait for the guys to progress. I wouldn't be surprised if in 3 years from now, at least one of the 2 running backs I mentioned will be a success. The Eagles just have to be patient with them. Now let's move on to the wide receivers. We can all agree that the Eagles have one wide receiver who is flat out irreplaceable. His name is A.J. Brown. With 869 receiving yards last season and 13.8 yards per reception, he deserves to be a starter. Now, although these are good stats, he played even better in 2020 as he cracked 1,000 receiving yards. Same thing with 2019. Nevertheless, Brown is still a very reliable wide receiver, and both him and Hurts should be a fun duo to watch in the future. The next wide receiver, who's not bad at all, is Devonta Smith. Devonta Smith is another guy who's going into his sophomore year, and he definitely proved something in his rookie season. He had a little under 1,000 receiving yards with 5 touchdowns and 64 receptions. Here we have yet another example of letting the man progress. Smith is 23 years old and needs a bit more time to get into his prime. That's something the Eagles should really consider focusing on when it comes to the young guys. A lot of them have potential in the league. And their third wide receiver is Quez Watkins. Watkins is probably the least helpful wide receiver of the 3 starters, but that doesn't mean he's all that bad. With 647 receiving yards and going 43 for 61 on targets, that's not bad at all. I believe the Eagles' wide receivers are not a big problem, and adding A.J. Brown was really what helped the cause. So to end the video off and answer the question, I'll be ranking all 5 parts I talked about in the video of the Eagles. The higher it is on the list means they should or be on the lookout of making a change, and the lower it is on the list means they shouldn't worry about it at all. Let's go from the bottom to the top. So at number 5, I'm going with the offensive line. I genuinely don't see how it could get any better, and as long as they're healthy, it should be good. At number 4, I'm going with the wide receivers. Now that the Eagles have A.J. Brown, I feel like things should be much easier for Jalen Hurts. And already having Devonta Smith should also make things 10 times better. At number 3, I'm going with the running backs. I put the wide receivers under the running backs because we already know that the Eagles shouldn't worry as much about the receivers. A.J. Brown is already looking like a beast, while Miles Sanders still hasn't proven the best version of himself. That's why I think wide receivers is less of a problem. At number 2, I'm going with the QB. Look, I think we can all agree Jalen Hurts isn't the biggest problem. Although he does have some flaws in his game, without him, some of the losses they had last season could have been way worse than they actually were. And of course, they wouldn't have won as many games. And that means number 1 is their defense. The defense was one huge problem last year, and the Eagles should seek improvement as they go. So to answer the question, how exactly can the Eagles get back to a Super Bowl caliber team? It's by letting their young guys progress, and assuming the defense is still a problem, fix it as much as you can.